This is TBK's Truth Frame, revealing the echoes of history across our world.
Ginger given, Chile's taken the fall of the Portuguese and the rise of the Dutch in Ceylon. The island at a crossroads. For more than a century and a half, the island of Ceylon had lived under the shadow of a foreign cross and a foreign crown. The Portuguese, who first arrived in 1505, had not come seeking land, they came seeking cinnamon, pearls, and souls to convert. But by the mid-1600s, their empire was collapsing. Their treasury was drained, their armies stretched thin, and their enemies both European and local were closing in. And in the Central Highlands, the Kingdom of Kandy watched. Patient. Calculating. Waiting for the moment when one empire would fall, and another could be invited in. This is the story of how the Portuguese lost Ceylon, how the Dutch took it, how the Kandian kingdom tried to play one empire against another, and how that gamble became remembered in one bitter proverb. Inguru dilo miris gath the wagi. Like giving ginger and receiving chilies. A warning from history. A lesson in unintended consequences. A reminder that in the game of empires, the smallest nation often pays the highest price. The Portuguese Empire cracks, 1505 to 1658. The Portuguese arrive by accident. The Portuguese were blown off course on their way to the Maldives and stumbled upon Ceylon in 1505. They quickly realized the island's value not for land, but for cinnamon, the most prized spice in Europe. Their strategy was simple. Control the ports. Control the cinnamon. Convert the coastal population to Catholicism. Manipulate the island's internal rivalries. By 1597, after the death of Dharmapala of Kate, who had willed his kingdom to the Portuguese, their rule became official. But they never conquered the highlands. The kingdom of Kandy resisted fiercely. The Portuguese fought war after war, but the mountains, forests, and guerrilla tactics of the Kandians kept them at bay. The Portuguese overreach. By the 1630s, the Portuguese were fighting the Dutch in Asia, the Kandians in the highlands. Internal rebellions. A collapsing Iberian economy. Their empire was stretched thin. Their forts were crumbling. Their soldiers were unpaid. And the Kandians saw an opportunity. The Kandian, Dutch alliance of 1638. The treaty that would later be remembered as ginger for chilies. Kandy's strategic move. King Rajasingha II of Kandy understood one truth. The Portuguese could not be defeated alone. So he reached out to the Dutch East India Company, VOC, a rising maritime power hungry for trade and territory. In 1638, the Kandian, Dutch treaty was signed. Its terms were simple. The Dutch would help expel the Portuguese. In return, the Dutch would receive trade privileges, especially cinnamon. The Kandians believed they were giving a small concession, ginger, to gain a massive advantage, removal of the Portuguese. But history had other plans. The war that broke the Portuguese, 1638 to 1658. The Dutch arrived with cannons and calculations. The Dutch were not missionaries like the Portuguese. They were businessmen. Every cannon fired had a cost. Every fort captured had a profit margin. Between 1638 and 1658, the Dutch systematically dismantled Portuguese power. Batacalo fell first. Gaul followed. Colombo, the Portuguese capital, fell in 1656 after a brutal siege. Jaffna, the last Portuguese stronghold, surrendered in 1658. The Portuguese era was over. But the Dutch did not leave. They stayed. And they stayed with a plan. The Dutch take the island, 1658 to 1796. The Dutch break their promise. Once the Portuguese were gone, the Canadians expected the Dutch to withdraw from the coastal regions. Instead, the Dutch strengthened the forts, took over the cinnamon lands, controlled all ports and trade routes, imposed taxes, installed Dutch governors in Colombo, Gaul, and Jaffna. The Canadian kingdom realized the truth. They had replaced one colonial master with another. This betrayal is what birthed the famous saying, "Ang guru dila miris gath the wagi." Like giving ginger and receiving chilies. Ginger is mild. Chilies burn. The Canadians believed they were giving the Dutch a mild concession trade rights. Instead, they received a far harsher, more controlling colonial power. The proverb became a warning passed down through generations. Beware of alliances with powers whose hunger is greater than their promises. The Canadians fight back. A mountain kingdom under siege. The Dutch controlled the coasts, but Kandy remained independent. The two sides clashed repeatedly. Dutch armies marched into the highlands. Canadians used scorched earth tactics. Disease and terrain destroyed Dutch battalions. Treaties were signed, broken, renegotiated. The Dutch never conquered Kandy. But they strangled its access to the sea, limiting its diplomacy and trade. The Dutch fort network. To secure their rule, the Dutch built or expanded a chain of forts. Colombo Fort. Gaul Fort, their masterpiece, still standing today. Jaffna Fort. Trincomalee Fort. Batacalo Fort. These forts were not just military structures, they were symbols of control, taxation, and surveillance. The legacy of Dutch rule. Economic transformation. Under the Dutch, Ceylon became deeply integrated into global trade. Cinnamon plantations expanded massively. Betel, pearls, and gemstones became major exports. The VOC monopolized every trade route. Administrative changes. The Dutch introduced a three-province administrative system, Colombo, Gaul, Jaffna. A layered bureaucracy mixing Dutch officers with local elites. Roman Dutch law, which still influences Sri Lankan law today. Cultural footprints. The Dutch left behind. Architecture. Place names. Burgher communities. Legal traditions. Fortified cities. But they also left behind a memory of broken promises. The proverb that survived empires. The saying "Ang guru dila miris gath the wagi" became a cultural shorthand for a deal gone wrong. A betrayal disguised as partnership. A trade where the giver loses more than they gain. The Candian kingdom believed the Dutch were allies. Instead, they became occupiers. The ginger they offered trade rights was mild. The chilies they received colonial domination burned for 138 years. A lesson for all ages. The fall of the Portuguese and the rise of the Dutch in Ceylon is not just a story of empires. It is a story of strategy, miscalculation, and the high cost of survival for small nations caught between global powers. It is a reminder that empires do not have friends, only interests. Treaties signed under pressure often carry hidden flames. And sometimes, the sweetest promises lead to the bitterest outcomes. The proverb lives on because its truth is eternal. Ang guru dilo miris gath the wage. Like giving ginger and receiving chilies. A warning from the past. A mirror for the present. A lesson for the future. How did the Dutch rule came to an end in Ceylon? We'll look into it in our next episode.
Thank you for stepping into this frame of truth. If this story moved you, share it forward and help restore the voices time tried to erase. Until the next episode, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep the memory alive.